Former millionaires, how did you lose all your money? A relative of mine made several million from scratch. I don't know of anyone more hardworking than him. Right out of high school, he got his real estate license and became a realtor. 30 years later, he owned a successful kitchen furniture company and over 20 commercial real estate properties. But that wasn't enough for him, so he started renting out his space to people who grew pot. His company started shipping weed to other states in their trucks, and as a result, he ended up behind bars with a minimum sentence of 10 years. The government confiscated all of his buildings and money, not me, my dad. When he retired, he made some profitable investments in the stock market. They were refinery stocks, and at that time there was a shortage of petroleum products in the U.S. Dad did a lot of research on this and scrutinized the situation. He got rich by about $2 million. That would be enough for him for the rest of his life. Dad was always considered a smart man. He had a PhD in math and had been considered a brainiac since the beginning of his career, since the 60s. However, he decided he had now reached a new level and bought several other investment products from the same company. I suggested that he diversify his money, invested in something like an annuity or another more conservative investment option to earn a steady income. I told him that if he listened to me, he would always be rich. However, he blew it. The moral of the story: 1. Just because you're lucky once doesn't mean you're a genius investor. 2. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Divorce. I was a millionaire, but then I got divorced, which almost bankrupted me. But I rolled up my sleeves, worked hard, and became a millionaire again. People, don't underestimate the detrimental effect of divorce proceedings on your net worth. My first husband, he made $1 million a year. He enjoyed life and spent money frivolously, but made enough to not worry about it. We divorced, but amicably. No child support for the kids or me. He just paid for everything the kids needed. Then he was diagnosed with leukemia. He fought it desperately for 3 years. The last 2 years, he spent a lot of money on this fight. But it was worth it. Money doesn't bring happiness, but the lack of it can ruin a life. The only consolation for me and the children is that there was nothing more he could do. He bought 2 years of life with his millions, and I'm glad he enjoyed it while he still could. I am not a former millionaire, but my ancestors were wealthy. My great-grandfather was born into a noble family, many generations of whom owned land, farms, and homes. They were very wealthy. He was the only son of his parents, but he had a rebellious nature. He decided to break tradition, went to serve in the army. And when the Second World War broke out, he was sent to defend his native Britain. On the continent, he was captured, spent several years in a prisoner of war camp, and became very devout. After the war, he returned, became a priest, and given an every penny to the church. Land, houses, titles, gave it all up, started living on a vicar's salary. No, I didn't lose it all, but I was hurt at the thought that I could have been a lord. I had my own business that was valued at about $3 million. My house was worth $1.4 million. There were over $2 million in investments, 4 expensive cars. The divorce ruined me. The ex-wife, attorney, and judge took away at least 3/4 of everything I owned. All I was left with was a Miata sports car, some money, and 51% of the stock in my company. On top of that, I had to pay child support. I gave up. Arranged to pay no alimony in exchange for a larger share of the company's stock. Got rid of everything else, bought a yacht, and took it offshore. 26 months later, came back to shore and started over. Made enough money to live comfortably, then left the business. Don't get married, boys. It's not worth it. I've been married twice. The first marriage ended in disaster. The second one frayed my nerves. Purely my opinion, based on personal experience. I work in finance. My team and I work with very wealthy clients. I have seen many millionaires who lost everything, not because they invested in the market, but for the following reasons: taxes, lifestyle, and wrong business moves. One of our clients earned $50,000 a month but spent $60,000. He had to go into his investments all the time, and in some months his expenses would skyrocket because he had a certain lifestyle and wanted more and more. The investment advice I give most often is, don't change your car, your house, or your wife. My parents were millionaires. They were both very smart, graduated from the most prestigious universities with master's degrees in business administration and architecture. After uni, they built luxury high-rise and private houses all over Queensland, Australia, and saved enough money to open a Michelin-starred restaurant on the water. It became very popular, and the money flowed. His parents have been on a spending spree ever since. They bought 2 penthouses in the same building and merged them into one. They bought and started renting out expensive apartments all over the city, bought several sports cars and even a yacht, traveled all over the planet with me and my sister. My life as a kid was like a model's Instagram page. But then, one day there was a flood, and the restaurant went underwater. $1 million worth of wine was destroyed, not to mention the kitchen supplies. Everything was destroyed. The parents had to sell everything to cover the cost of the restaurant. Now they live in a small apartment. They are in their 70s, but they continue to work to pay off the loans that are still hanging over them. My advice to you, if a large sum of money falls into your hands, don't be foolish. My father had a company that was worth $20 million, had 12 branches, and 3 more were about to open. An employee of the company who was caught selling drugs made up a story that he was buying drugs from my dad's company and that the whole company was just a front for one of the Mexican drug cartels. My dad had lived in Mexico for a while and had a criminal record, and that was enough for the DEA to believe the story and raid the place. They seized all the computers, scared the employees. They raided all the branches at the same time, using more than 300 special forces, and also our house. My father was not at home. Only his younger children were there. They were traumatized by all this. The DEA found nothing. Nothing at all. All the paperwork was in order. Nothing that could have caused a case to be opened and charges to be filed. However, most of the employees and managers left the company because of the investigation. My father had to close most of the branches in less than a year and sell the company at a large loss to pay the lawyers defending him. Worst of all, DEA officials don't want to admit that they found nothing. They spent millions on this raid and left the case open, causing the father to no longer be able to work in his field. His lawyers have admitted that the prosecution secretly, but quite seriously, asked them to find some sin that the father could confess to, and then they would save face. But the father won't lie, so they won't dismiss the case. My grandfather was a thrifty man. He tried to do everything himself, hated to hire anyone to do any work. He worked for about 40 years at one of the General Motors plants. His savings, numerous bank deposits, and securities reached a total value of about $2 or $3 million. After a disagreement with the plant management, he quit and started his own business. In his 64th year, he began landscaping and growing evergreens for sale, earning contracts with the county and local businesses, which brought him a lot more money. Eventually, Grandpa was diagnosed with cancer and began to retire little by little. He was 75 years old. Mom took time off work to help Grandma care for Grandpa until he passed away, leaving everything to Grandma. We moved in with Grandma to help her around the house and with the closing of the business. About a year later, my aunt, let's call her Karen, showed up, and suddenly, things started going missing. For example, farm equipment and other items. Her daughter's husband broke into the barn and cleaned it out, taking a lot of family valuables. And then the barn mysteriously burned down. It wasn't long after that before Karen convinced her grandmother to let her handle all the financial matters. Then her aunt kicked us out of the house. Karen got hold of Grandma's power of attorney again and legally appropriated all of her assets. Within 2 years, they sold the house and land, liquidated all of Grandpa's stocks and bonds, and then fled to Florida. Grandma's inglorious end came when she was given 20 doses of insulin instead of one, resulting in diabetic ketoacidosis, after which she died a long and agonizing death. Out of an estimated $4 million inheritance, Mom and her two sisters received equal shares of $12,000 each. Karen got the house and cars, which she eventually sold off. That's how we lost everything.